Americans have some of the highest prescription drug costs in the world, despite all of these scientific innovation and medical breakthroughs that are made here. Now, everyone agrees that the system does not work. Millions of people cannot afford their medicines. On this special edition of World Business Report, we'll take a look at how fixing America's drug pricing problem is not that simple.
Some months I can only take part of my pills or else go hungry.
Can't hardly afford them, so I don't get them.
I certainly am not smart enough to figure out our health situation, but we got problems.
Belching smokestacks dot the Appalachian Mountains in West Virginia. For decades, coal was the leading industry, but many of those mines have closed. West Virginia is now one of the poorest states in America. And partly because of that, it is now also one of the sickest. On average, adults in the state take 20 different medications prescribed by doctors. The national average is 12. For people already living on the edge, the financial burden of paying for prescription drugs is just too much.
By the time I get done paying my bills and my house payment and my roof loan, there's hardly anything left for medication.
Nowhere is the hardship of the increasing cost of prescription drugs more clear than West Virginia. We are in the heart of coal country. A lot of the people here suffer from diabetes, and unsurprisingly, lung diseases are also very common. Celeste Whedon gets a checkup every 3 months. She has lung disease and is on oxygen 24 hours a day.
It's really difficult. You know, like I said, I'm on limited income. And so some months I can only take part of my pills or else go hungry and get my medication. So it's really difficult for me.
There is the problem of patients, especially patients with low income, lack of insurance, trouble with transportation, helping them get the right medicines that really work for them, that don't hurt them, and that they can afford is a big job that takes a lot of time.
Even Washington agrees that something needs to be done. U.S. President Donald Trump has said one of his top priorities is to address the high cost of medicines.
One of my greatest priorities is to reduce the price of prescription drugs.
But America's healthcare system is complicated. Everyone in the U.S. has to have some kind of health insurance. Insurance companies buy medicines from drug companies. To get the best price, they hire pharmacy benefit managers to negotiate discounts. And every single one of these players is a for-profit business. Lisa Gill is with Consumer Reports and has spent many years looking at the cost of prescription drugs on patients.
We don't really have any checks or balances. There's no real law, rule, or regulation that says to a drug manufacturer, hey, you can only charge this much money. At least today there's not.
Sometimes I've paid for prescriptions for patients. Yeah.
And while the drug industry bickers over who is to blame for these astronomical prices, doctors and pharmacists, like Brenna Ross, are left picking up the slack as best they can.
When a patient, especially if it's something, you need a blood thinner, or you have a patient who has COPD and can't breathe, they can't afford their inhaler, or diabetes is really big in West Virginia. And life-sustaining medications, insulin, you need insulin if you're a diabetic, if you're insulin dependent. And if you have a copay and you can't afford it, then patients have just let that go, and it's tough.
But ask industry players what the problem is, well, that is when the blame game begins. Robert Zirkelbach represents the major U.S. drug manufacturers.
What might be surprising to your viewers is that medicine costs are growing at their slowest rate in years, and yet what patients are being asked to pay is increasing every single year.
J.C. Scott is the head of a lobby group that represents pharmacy benefit managers. Remember, they are the ones negotiating drug prices on behalf of insurance companies.
One of the biggest tools that we utilize is called rebates, which are essentially negotiated discounts that we then pass through to the clients that we represent.
But critics of these pharmacy benefit managers say they are not actually passing those savings on to their clients.
An insurance company and the middlemen that they hire to negotiate on their behalf would much prefer to pay $100 for a medicine and get a $50 rebate than just pay $50 for a medicine, because they make their money on how big the rebate is.
If you're looking at the core of where are those cost drivers, it's the drug companies that set those list prices. They have that authority entirely to themselves.
And while the industry continues to fight amongst themselves, everyday Americans pay the price. This is not a problem unique to West Virginia. Millions of people across the United States cannot afford their medicines.
I lived in this house since I was 7 years old.
It's been almost 5 years since William Rohde got a new kidney, and nearly 2 years since he moved out of his childhood home and in with his mother-in-law.
I have to have a 5 milligram, a 1 milligram, and a half milligram.
As a transplant recipient, Bill takes 8 to 10 pills a day, some of which he will take for the rest of his life. 2 years ago, his medicines cost $900 a month, but he only received $1,850 from disability.
So basically, he didn't leave a lot left for food, clothing, monthly bills, insurances, everything, mortgage payments. We finally got to a point where we had to make a decision whether we were going to fill my prescriptions or pay the mortgage. I decided to live.
In November's midterm elections, the cost of healthcare was one of the top issues for voters. And both Republicans and Democrats agree that prescription drugs are too expensive. And U.S. lawmakers are now looking at new rules to try and bring down some of those costs.
The pharma industry does some good things. It creates life-extending and pain-relieving medications, but they're killing us here with the price.
For more than a decade, Congressman Peter Welch has been trying to lower the cost of prescription drugs.
The pharma industry has been very successful in basically saying hands off and let us do all the pricing and you do all the paying.
So is government intervention in the United States the answer?
No, the government intervention is not the answer. Just because there are flaws in the system that need to be addressed doesn't mean we should upend the entire system and bring in a model that from other countries that doesn't work in the best interest of patients.
I don't understand what they're talking about, because what I've seen over the years is their profits go up and up and up. They're the manufacturers, they're the distributors, and really that's where the point of focus, I think, has to be.
At the end of the day, we believe the competition and negotiation is going to be more effective in driving the net price down than what we see through artificial setting of prices by government.
We found some people who actually delayed retirement, if you can believe this, delayed retirement so they could keep their health care benefits and still be able to fill prescriptions as they needed to.
So I do really hope that something comes from this, that it educates people, makes awareness, causes change, because it definitely needs to happen. I wouldn't wish this on anybody.
The complicated system of drug pricing in America is deeply entrenched. Despite political consensus that prices need to be lower, actually making the fundamental changes is a harder pill to swallow. And for now, that means the American consumer ends up paying the price.